This is a talk about Puppet 3. This is something that's near and dear to all of our hearts. This is Eric Sorenson. He's the product owner of the platform open source, I guess, value stream inside of Puppet Labs. Eric comes to us with a lot of knowledge of configuration management. He came from the CFengine days back in the day. I believe he was the person that first put CFengine in version control. Is that true? Okay, yeah. So we've known him for a long time in the configuration management space. We were thrilled when he came on board at Puppet Labs. And he's going to talk to you all about Telly, which is the code name for Puppet 3. And here's Eric.
So, hi. First off, what's in this talk? I'm going to talk a little bit about who I am, and very briefly, I'll talk about the road to get to Telly, some new stuff that's in Puppet 3, some stuff that changed, and we'll talk about the future of the open source Puppet product. So, first off, I want to establish some neck-beard bona fides, I guess. As Mike said, I came from the open source config management world from a long time back. I started using CFengine in 1998 and was in version 1.5 and didn't work very well. There was definitely some problems with it. Did several CFengine deployments at places like Transmeadow. I worked for several years at Palm, and I was in the config management wars that went on in the early 2000s, where people battled back and forth with Lisa papers and various other textual means. I'm sorry, hold on just a sec. I can't find my notes, and I think I had some more stuff to say here. I probably should have done this first. Yeah. All right. Well, this is Telly. So you guys know Sesame Street. Telly was one of the early Sesame Street characters. He's called Telly because he was all about television, and whenever he would watch TV, his eyes would get the spirals on him, and he went completely nuts. So they changed his character after the first couple of seasons because they figured that the fact that he sat 2 inches from the television was not a good role model for the kids. So they sort of changed his character around to make him a high-strung, lovable kind of guy. He's really into triangles, which, 3 sides on a triangle. This is Puppet 3.0, so there might be some planning there. Also, he was an expert in, they kept his love of television and made him an expert in computers and electronics. So also, a conspiracy, maybe not, maybe. But all of the Puppet releases over time have historically had Muppet and Puppet-related code names, and so this one came up to be Telly. So this is what we'll be talking about. He's kind of a lovable guy, but he's got some issues. So this is a graph of Puppet release numbers over time. My subtitle for this graph is Give Edward Tufte an Aneurysm. This is some fairly sophisticated chart junk. But back in the early days, Puppet was in the 0 dot release numbers. And I don't know if you guys remember from the 2010 Puppet Camp, I believe, in San Francisco. We had the great renaming, where instead of the next version after 0.25 being 0.26, we went to 2.6 and instantly got 10 times more Puppet. So that's what, that's what this chart shows. And the releases have come roughly year over year since then. This is the first, full major number release since 2.7, and we'll talk about what that means in a minute. Part of what's potentially a less chart junk slide, comes from the GitHub project. GitHub does some pretty cool visualizations. This goes back to the beginning of time. Even though Puppet, unlike CFengine, started out in configuration, being version controlled, it was in Subversion originally and got imported into Git when Luke moved over to using Git himself. And the history was preserved when it became a GitHub project. So this shows all of the, on the dotted line, all of the code commits over, or the total lines of code, and then greens are additions and reds are subtractions there. The giant spike that's 3 orders of magnitude bigger than anything else was when the code base was reformatted to use 2-space indentation. So it was not that all the code was deleted and then re-added. It was just all reformatted. And there have been a couple of other notable changes. Most of those were just like readmes, or like the changelog grew to be 11,000 lines in the root of the source tree, and so we deleted that recently, and that's a big red spike on the right hand side. This is where I critically need my notes here, so I'm sorry. Hold on just a moment. For all of the fact that I used to work at Apple, I'm not a keynote master. It says scroll notes up and down. Anyone have a hint for me? Just show yeah. What's that? Yeah. There are cat jokes. Bear with me here.
It'll be worth it.
It will be worth it. Nigel wins. Oh, hell yeah. Okay. I did all this work to write this stuff up, and then I couldn't see it, so I've been winging it ever since then. This one, I really need the notes, though. So I unfortunately, as awesome as the GitHub visualization was, they didn't allow you to change the time scale on the axis, and we're not terribly interested in what happened 6 or 7 years ago on the project. We're more interested in what happened in the road leading up to this release. And so I went through and actually did this by hand and just generated the same. This is the same data as the GitHub graphs. It shows code additions on the top and deletions on the negative axis, or on the negative y-axis there. But this is just over the release candidates. We started releasing release candidates for Telly in May of this year, and we had 1, 2, and 3 out by June 1st. I started in June, on June 27th, and as Luke said in his keynote this morning, I kind of jumped right into the middle of this conflagration of a release where we were having, the team decided that the code quality wasn't what we wanted to release, and it wasn't a product that we're really super excited about, and wanted to go back and take some more time to go back to the drawing board, fix some stuff in it, and really polish up the release so that it was something that was going to be a great product for everybody. Mike Stonke posted in July that we were reverting back from release candidate status to doing ongoing development, and since then, that was at the RC4 in the middle there, and then things kind of got busy. We did a bunch of changes over the summer. RC4 and 5 came out at the end of August, and there were a substantial number of changes. As time has gone on, we're now at RC8, which came out the other day. Feel pretty confident about it, and I had hoped to say that the release would be available for you to download right now, It looks like it'll probably be another day or two. We're trying to work out some problems with WebRick. I don't know, more than usual problems with WebRick, but we, again, want to make sure that it's something that's really going to be an amazing release. So if it goes on longer, we'll keep doing the release candidates until there's something that we're really solidly proud of. But what is in these code? I mean, there's a lot of code added, a lot of code deleted. Andy Parker, the lead developer, would say that this 11,000 lines of deleted code was a good start. He feels like the code base is too big and that we would be better served to trim things down. We'll talk about that in a little bit too. But the big question is, what is it that's changing over the releases? So let me talk a little bit about that. First, I'm going to talk about new things, which, holy crap, that slide got blown out. But keep calm and ooh, shiny. There should be some good shiny stuff on the release to make it worth a .0 release number. So one of the things that we spent a lot of time on, and Jeff McCune is up front here, dove deep into the rabbit hole of plugin sync. How many of you guys have plugin sync running on your servers or use it? How many of you have seen problems with plugin sync? About half of the folks. Yeah, so plugin sync is a way for Puppet to arbitrarily download and execute code over the network. And as you might imagine, given that description, it's both a powerful tool as well as a force for evil. And so a lot of the work went into improving things about plugin sync. One of the things that's cool about it is that it's now enabled by default. It used to be that if you wanted to bootstrap your clients in an environment where you had plugin sync on, and the catalog that they were delivered used types and providers that were delivered via plugin sync, you had to manually go in and change the startup so that it was enabled. And now plugin sync is just on out of the box. Hopefully that'll ease some bootstrapping pain. One of the other nice improvements is that plugins are lazy loaded. This is a little hard to demo, so I don't have code here. But what used to happen is that every time a file had finished downloading, it would immediately be loaded into the agent's Ruby environment. And so if you had something that required a file that was also plugin synced and the second file had not yet been downloaded, that require would fail. Now the whole plugin sync is done, and then just as files are used in the catalog, that's when they're actually downloaded. Next one's a big thing. Kelsey, who was up earlier, did a bunch of work on this. We've tried to make a differentiation or kind of an ideological shift between plugin syncing absolutely everything to plugin syncing that stuff which the agent needs in order to run the catalog that it gets from the master. So facts are there, types and providers will be there. But if you're doing stuff like new applications and new extensions, we wanted to make a more robust code loading system that would be platform independent, would let you specify dependencies on the operating system. Like, hey, wait, this sounds familiar. This sounds like a packaging system. I think I've seen this before. So Kelsey did a bunch of work to make it so that you can install stuff from a gem, like for instance, a Puppet Labs Cloud Provisioner. You could install it as a gem, and Puppet will find it out of the load path without you having to twiddle stuff around. So that's, I think all of those are some pretty awesome improvements and should hopefully ease some of the pain that people are feeling around plugin sync. Another big set of changes around platform support, and one of the awesome things is that we now have full-on Ruby 1.9 support in Telly. So if you are in a shop that is a more cutting-edge Ruby development shop, or you just like 1.9 or you hate 1.8, this might be the same thing. They might be slightly different. It sort of works in 2.7, but it works for real in 3. All the test matrices out of our QA environment use Ruby 1.9 in addition to 1.8.7 now. Yeah, so if you've been filing bugs and run into trouble running Puppet 2.7 under Ruby 1.9, please don't do that no more. Just update and everything should work really well. We have some cool Solaris support too, and I want to call out some contributions from the community here. We had an intern, Rahul, who was with us over the summer. He used to work at Sun and had added some great Solaris support. And Stefan Schultz helped out with the Solaris 11 style packaging. There's some package format changes. You can now hold Solaris packages like you can Debian. Those are the only two providers that support holdability now. And in Puppet zones as a top-level type work really well now. We closed a bug that is entitled "Zones have been broken since 0.24.8." So if you look back on the timeline, that's a long ways back that the thing has not been working. And Ashley Penny, one of the community members, contributed some great support for additional Solaris variants like Open Indiana, and made it so that all of those roll up into an OS family fact, just like Red Hat, Fedora, CentOS, and Scientific Linux all show OS family Red Hat. You get the same thing for Solaris now, so that should really make manifest a lot simpler. And the last sort of big platform area is for Windows support. Josh Cooper, who is our lead Windows developer, did some awesome work for Windows MSI packages. So there's some really cool, first-class citizen kind of stuff that you can get on Windows that was not available previous to Telly. We got some, I don't know if you guys saw Kelsey's talk earlier. He talked about Hiera support being built in. Hiera is a hierarchical data store. Ari wrote that. And it's been available since last June, but was always an add-on thing. And in fact, the testing matrix and the installation dependency matrix got really complicated. You needed 4 packages in order for this to work on Red Hat. So you needed Hiera, it was a big complicated mess. And now we've really simplified it. The packages now have dependency, like the Puppet package for 3.0 on all the platforms has a package level dependency on pulling in Hiera. And inside the language, whereas before, in order to make use of it, you had to use the parser functions that would specifically call out to Hiera and set a default that would be time.apple.com on my Mac. Now you just have NTP server, and the Hiera lookup happens behind the scenes for you. So again, really simplifies the manifest, lets you get really good data code separation and a really much more painless user experience if you want to share code or reuse code using Hiera. So that's a pretty cool addition. There are a few DSL level changes, not that many. One of them that was it was like one of the 20 most voted for tickets is about unless keyword. Seems like a simple thing. Almost all languages have it. Puppet's DSL didn't. So now you can say, unless your operating system is OpenBSD, you need more neckbeard. Speaking of which, I'm going to take a quick watt break for other language things that have been fixed up. Have you guys seen Gary Bernhardt's talk on destroyallsoftware.com on Watt? It's like he describes some inconsistencies and weird things that happen in Ruby and JavaScript. And if you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. It's really good. This is the Puppet, a very brief Puppet version of this. And if you guys have been following, I posted a comment about this to the mailing list and got some really good responses. This is one that we decided to keep the behavior that's in 2.7. It was going to change. But if you look at this code, so I'm setting up a define type at the top. It has a default for this $param variable that says hello. So if you don't pass param in, you'll just say hello. And then I invoke that define type with an undef for param. What would you expect? Just shout out, what would you expect this to print? An error? I accept that. Yeah. What's that? Blank line. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, it actually says hello. What? So again, we kept that behavior, but I'm not entirely convinced that was the right thing to do there. But the problem with changing it was that it wasn't a change that we had done intentionally. It just kind of happened, and there wasn't a nice migration path. One useful thing about this is that you can use it to pass through defaults. So if instead of just having this invoking the define type directly, if it was wrapped up inside a class that might or might not get parameters from outside of it, not setting the param to undef and allowing it to be overridden actually is a fairly useful thing. And without a nice alternative to, or a way to preserve people's running code, it didn't seem right to break that and not provide a better, cleaner way to do that. Here's one more. In this case, where we have this one's about namespaces. So if you have a class that's you got foo, we got bar who is subclasses foo, and you want to include the top level foo in your catalog, prefixing it with that double colon. I should have put line numbers here, but prefixing with double colon foo, you'd think would take you all the way back up to the top and would invoke that. And in 2.7, it would not. It would get you. That's Angkor Wat. It would get you the wrong thing. Now it gets you the right thing, and this will actually include the top level foo. We're trying to move towards more normalization. If there's something that's clearly wrong and crazy, let's fix that. But again, if there's not a way to get what you want, let's not take it away and not provide something that's better. So let's talk about some changes. Wait, that's the wrong kind of change. Let's talk about changes. Let's talk about these kind of changes. So in between 2.7x and RC7, there were a lot of changes. Like the cumulative totals of those graphs earlier amounted to 1,500 files changed, 37,000 lines inserted, and 68,000 lines deleted. Again, a pretty good start. But what was the upshot of all that change? Like, what was the point? Well, a huge point, as Luke pointed out this morning, is performance. Thanks. Yeah, you guys, you're obviously people who are running 2.7 now and are maybe running 2.7 at scale, and maybe have run into some problems with CPU usage on your Puppet Masters being really high. These charts are from Greg Delaval at WolfNet. He's :D on IRC, and I was just talking about Telly RCs on IRC one day, and he said, yeah, we were running RC6, and all of a sudden my Puppet Masters aren't dying anymore. And I said, oh, really? That's interesting. Can you send me some numbers? And he sent these great graphs over that show, he had, so the timeline here is that on the 17th there, he had added a bunch more resources to be managed on these Puppet Masters, and he saw, the CPU usage almost double there. And so then he installed the Telly RC, and everything crashed. No, just kidding. The CPU usage dropped, and his catalog compile times went way down, and his the throughput that he was able to get with the same amount of CPU resources was way up. We saw a similar thing internally at Puppet Labs. This is a graph from Adrian Finch online. He pulled together some awesome stats from their 2.7 to 3 upgrade. This is the total catalog retrieval and apply time as they installed Telly across the Puppet Labs Puppet Masters. And that's like roughly half. The other neat thing about it is that the application time really seemed to smooth out. Like, instead of being highly variable, it was much more predictable. So if you're seeing performance troubles around busy Puppet Masters, slow application times on your clients, give give Telly a try and let us know how you go with it. I'd like to call out Daniel Pittman's work in this. Well, this is one of the main things that came out of that that pulling back from release RC status back into development mode was Daniel went through and did some really strong work on fixing a lot of areas around making objects when we didn't need to, changing our catalog serialization so it's not so slow, and reducing the number of stats that we do on the servers, needlessly touching files hundreds and hundreds of times during a run. So lots of awesome stuff there. How many of you are running Puppet under Ruby 1.8.5? Anybody? Well, I have some good news and some bad news. There's no more 1.8.5 support in Telly, so sorry. It's a really bad Ruby version. It's really old. The world has moved on. We have again, in the spirit of not taking away things without providing something better, we have a great migration path for you. The primary platform that people are running today, and correct me if you guys are on something else, I'd love to hear from you. But the primary platform that has Ruby 1.8.5 today is Red Hat Enterprise 5, which shipped with 1.8.5, and because of Red Hat's long support cycles and just their policy of not bumping up versions during a cycle, they're going to stay on 1.8.5 until the end of time. Well, we've provided, Mike and his team pulled together some great 1.8.7 drop-in packages that are backports from the later EL6. So so it installs right over your system Ruby and brings you up to 1.8.7 P330, something like that. 370. So yeah, pretty modern 370, and works really well. So yeah, so there you go. One last thing, this is one that caused a little bit of consternation during the 2.7 cycle, mostly because we started emitting error messages that said that things were going to break for you, and things weren't actually going to break. The error message was just like too aggressive about things that it thought would break. So dynamic scoping's gone, and this is an example from Nick Fairland, our awesome doc writer, who has probably the most insane collection of crazy Watt stuff in the Puppet language I've ever seen. It's unreal. It's on his GitHub, and if you want to see the furthest extremes of what's possible in the Puppet DSL, go check that out. It's called Evil Made Manifest, I think is the repo name. What dynamic scoping is automatically pulling variables from higher parent scopes down into the scope where you're trying to evaluate the variable. With dynamic scoping, pre-2.7, this would have worked okay. Now that's not going to work. Just referencing $var in this scope, there's no such thing. Instead of finding it in the parent and finding it in that parent, finding it in that parent, now if you want to reference an unqualified variable, it has to be directly in that scope, inside, i.e. defined inside that class, at top scope or in the node, or you're not going to find it. In order to be very clear, use this explicit syntax for pointing at where your variables are defined, and you'll have no problems. So I'm going to blast through this really quick. This was a list of the top 15 or so most watched bugs, and the number of most watched unclosed bugs, and the number of watchers on each one. And the strikeout ones are ones that are fixed in Telly. So we still have some work to do, but there's certainly some stuff that people cared strongly about that we went through and tried to make sure that was in this release. So let me talk briefly about the long road ahead. This is in Onion Valley Road in Northern California. My friend Bassem, he is insane. He did this as part of a 250-mile bike ride, and came back with some crazy photos. Our road ahead, we're going to continue to stay focused on quality. We want to knock down the remaining top watched bugs. We want to implement fixes. I should say we're going to implement fixes for some of the platform stuff that Luke mentioned this morning, like really to become an actual platform that other people can build on, including our own commercial applications. Some of that's going to be paying down some technical debt. the ones that have been biting us the hardest as this came out were very simple things that turn out to be really complex when you dive into it due to the entangled nature of the code base. Stuff like loading code, like you think that would be pretty straightforward. Stuff like setting configuration settings, things that we should have nailed, but trying to change one in one area had like action at a distance kind of effects in far-flung parts of the code base. So we're really going to double down on cleaning that stuff up, fixing it. Going forward, you'll probably see the Puppet core get slimmer. Again, deleting all the code. I mean, not all of it, but like a lot of it. And making it a slimmer core with more things that can be modularized, moving out into modules. A great example of this is the Nagios types that were a very early thing in Puppet and are still in core. They're used by some people, but the problem is that in order to make use of them, in order to get changes into them, they're tied now to the Puppet release cycle. Whereas if they were in a standalone module that maybe was combined as you get in your package when you get it from your OS vendor, or you get it even from like Puppet Labs app or Yum repos, maybe those things would be included. But if you go and look at the Puppet Get repo, it's going to have way fewer files in it, so that we have a smaller surface area and are able to understand the impacts of our changes a lot better than we do now. For the 3.x series, we want to move to much faster release cycles, probably like a monthly to 6 weekly, something like that. But not, and some of these will have new features. Some of them are going to be focused on internal stuff. But really, the idea is to have a theme for each of the releases so that we can focus our efforts on one area, get that area cleaned up, and move on to the next one, and not continually pay interest on technical debt the whole way along. Some of the themes they might see would be things like a fix-up for error messages and exit codes. Again, very simple stuff, but we do some of these things wrong where if you're trying to do Puppet parser validate and the manifest fails validation, that should exit with a non-zero exit code. So if you're using it in a pre-commit hook, you can rely on that exit code to kick the commit back out. And I'm not sure what the other ones are, but I do think that they're going to be driven by user testing. Luke mentioned this morning. We're really trying to focus on fixing problems that users have. I'd love to hear from you guys. I've been trying to keep tabs on Redmine on the bug database and to stay on top of new bugs that are filed. There may be old bugs that you filed that you care a lot about that fell into the bug graveyard where they're probably sitting in accepted status but don't have anybody assigned to them, and therefore they're never going to get done. So feel free to update them, assign them to me if you want to. I don't mind. And hopefully we'll get them. I'm not guaranteeing that that's going to get them fixed, but it will guarantee that I'll look at it. So the last part is a call to action. This was the German version of Action Jackson. It seemed way more awesome than the US one. But so what I'd like you to do is to download Telly. We're at RC8 now. The RCs are pretty stable. You can try it out on, you're on a master that's not running in production. Try it out over your manifest. Because of the wide variety of places that Puppet runs, we can't test every single code path. It's literally impossible. So we need you to give it a try. Don't run out and install it on all of your production servers at once without testing it out. I'm not saying that, but do give it a try. File bugs if you run into them. I mean, let us know through Redmine what's going on, post to the mailing list, and tell us what you think about it. I'm really proud about the release. I'm really happy to be able to be in a position now where I can make have some influence on the product that I love and that I ran for many years, and really help move the space that's been kind of the focus of my career for the last 15 years forwards and into the next thing. So I'm really happy to be part of this. Thanks a lot.
I think there's ice cream somewhere out there, so start running.